So now we're switching gears from emotion to think about motivation. And I want to start off by talking about some of the predominant theories behind motivation. So, first off, what is motivation? Well, it's the force that initiates, guides, and maintains our goal oriented behaviors. It's what causes us to take action, whether to grab a snack to reduce hunger or to enroll in college to earn a degree. Motivation involves the biological, emotional, social, and cognitive forces that activate our behavior. So, in everyday use, the term motivation is frequently used to describe why a person does something. It's the driving force behind human emotions. For example, the girl in this picture is motivated to run so she doesn't become that tiger's lunch. Motivation doesn't just refer to the factors that activate behaviors. It also involves the factors that direct and maintain these goal directed actions, though such motives are rarely directly observable. As a result, we often have to infer the reasons why people do the things they do based on observable behaviors. So, what exactly lies behind the motivations for why we act? Well, psychologists have proposed different theories, including drive theory, instinct theory, and humanistic theory, which you may have heard of referred to as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we'll go through those all in a minute. The reality is that there are many different forces that guide and direct our motivations. And there are many different uses for motivations. They serve as a guiding force for all human behavior, but understanding how motivation works and the factors that may impact it can be important in a number of ways. So, by understanding motivation, we can help improve our efficiency as we work towards our goals, encourage people to engage in health oriented behaviors, help encourage people to avoid unhealthy or maladaptive behaviors such as risk taking, help people feel more control of their lives, and help improve overall well being and happiness. When was the last time you did something simply for the enjoyment of the activity itself? There are a number of activities that fall into this category. For instance, you may plant a garden, paint a picture, play a game, write a story, or read a book. These may or may not produce something or be rewarded in any external way, but we do them because we like to. It makes us happy. When you pursue an activity for the pure enjoyment of it, you do so because you are intrinsically motivated. Your motivations for engaging in the behavior arise entirely from within, rather than out of a desire to gain some type of external reward, such as prizes, money, or acclaim. Now, this isn't to say that intrinsically motivated behaviors don't come with their own rewards. These rewards involve creating positive emotions within the individual. Activities can generate such feelings when they give people a sense of meaning, like participating in volunteer or church events. They may also give you a sense of progress when you see that your work is accomplishing something positive, such as your garden growing, or competence when you learn something new or become more skilled at a task, like if you try and teach yourself a foreign language. Consider for a moment your motivations for watching this lecture. If you're watching simply because you love hearing the sound of my voice and you have an interest in psychology and you simply want to learn more about motivation, you're acting based on intrinsic motivation. But more likely, you're watching this because you need to learn this information to pass my class and you really don't want to get a bad grade. This means that you're acting based on extrinsic motivation, which you may have guessed by now is the opposite of intrinsic motivation, and refers to those that arise from outside of the individual, and often involve rewards such as trophies, money, social recognition, praise, or, you guessed it, an A in your psychology class. Let's dive in now to some of the theories. According to instinct theories, people are motivated to behave in certain ways because they're evolutionarily pre-programmed to do so. Whoa, let's back up a second. What's an instinct? Biologically speaking, an instinct is a species-specific pattern of behavior that is not learned. So an example of this in the animal world is seasonal migration. Animals don't learn to do this. It's an inborn pattern of behavior. Instincts motivate some species to migrate at certain times of each year. William James created a list of human instincts that included such things as attachment, play, shame, anger, fear, shyness, modesty, and love. The main problem with this theory rather, is that it did not really explain the behaviors, it just described it. So by the 1920s, instinct theories were pushed aside in favor of other motivational theories. Although contemporary evolutionary psychologists still study the influence of genetics and heredity and the role that they play on human behavior. The incentive theory suggests that people are motivated to do things because of external rewards, sort of like that intrinsic motivation we just talked about. So you might be motivated to go to work each day for the monetary reward of being paid, get that paycheck. This might also sound an awful lot like operant conditioning, where behaviors are learned by forming associations with outcomes. So reinforcement strengthens a behavior while punishment weakens it. While incentive theory is similar, it instead proposes that people intentionally pursue certain courses of action in order to gain access to rewards. So the greater the perceived rewards, the more strongly people are motivated to pursue those reinforcements. You know that if you put in your 40 hours at work each week, you're going to get your paycheck. So you're highly motivated to show up to work, even if you may not want to, because you want to earn that reinforcer. The drive theory, or drive reduction theory of motivation, became popular during the 1940s and 1950s as a way to explain behavior, learning, and motivation. This theory was developed by behaviorist Clark Hull and further developed by his collaborator Kenneth Spence. According to this theory, the reduction of drives is the primary force behind motivation. So according to the drive theory, people are motivated to take certain actions in order to reduce the internal tension that is caused by unmet needs. So you might be motivated to drink a glass of water in order to reduce the uncomfortable internal state of thirst. This theory is useful in explaining behaviors that have strong biological components, such as thirst or hunger, as you see in the image here. Hull based his theory on the concept of homeostasis, which is the idea that your body actively works to maintain a certain sense of balance or equilibrium. So for example, your body regulates its temperature in order to ensure that you don't become too hot or too cold. Hull believed that behavior was one of the ways an organism maintains this balance. So based on this idea, he suggested that all motivation arises as a result of these biological needs. Now, in his theory, Hull used the term drive to refer to the state of tension or arousal created by biological or physiological needs. Thirst, hunger, and the need for warmth are all examples of drives. So a drive creates an unpleasant state, a tension that needs to be reduced. In order to reduce this state of tension, humans and animals seek out ways to fulfill these biological needs. We get a drink when we're thirsty. We eat when we're hungry. We turn up the thermostat or put on a sweater when we're cold. And Hull suggested that humans and animals will then repeat any behavior that reduces these drives, linking back to his behaviorist roots. So we know that if we're hungry, we eat. We don't feel hungry anymore. The next time we're hungry, we are likely to eat again. And that's what the image is showing. So we move from a state of homeostasis where everything is good and balanced. Suddenly now we're hungry, we're experiencing this drive for food, and by eating, we're able to reduce that drive and return to the state of homeostasis. The problem with the drive theory of motivation is that these behaviors are not always motivated purely by physiological needs. Ever eat just because you're bored, or because someone else is eating and the food is there and you think, why not? You may not actually be hungry, but you eat anyway. The drive reduction theory of motivation, therefore, wouldn't really fit with that explanation. And so while it was once a dominant force in psychology, it's far less well accepted today. But our drives don't always play nicely with each other. Sometimes they clash. Think about when you're laying on the couch. You're so comfy and sleepy, you found the perfect position. Maybe your cat is all snuggled up with you and they're curled up in a happy ball of sleepy adorable. But you're so hungry. In this case, our desire for food is conflicting with our desire for rest. Certain drives generate tendencies towards approach, which is a predisposition towards certain stimulation, like food or objects of sexual desire. Other drives generate tendencies towards avoidance or a disposition away from stimuli like rude people or a stressful situation. And these approach and avoidance drives often conflict. Like when you see someone cute at the bar and want to go talk to them, but geez, that fear of rejection is so real. So here we see both approach and avoidance goals fighting it out, oftentimes resulting in leaving you standing there staring awkwardly while you try to decide what you want to do. As we get closer to our goals, our tendency to avoid increases more rapidly than our tendencies to approach. This explains phenomena like difficulty finishing tasks as deadlines loom or regretting prior commitments. Ever do that thing where in June you offer to organize the holiday party and it seems like a great idea, you've got plenty of time and I have got this. But as the goal approaches, as October, November, December slip by, you're like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? This is so much work. I have no idea how I'm going to get this done. So as the goal, December, the party comes closer, your avoidance tendencies get a bit stronger. According to the arousal theory of motivation, each person has a unique arousal level that is right for them. And I'm talking physiological arousal, not necessarily sexual arousal. When our arousal levels drop below these personalized optimal levels, we seek some sort of stimulation to elevate them. So, for example, if our social levels drop too low, we might seek stimulation by going out with friends. If the levels become too elevated and we become overstimulated, we might be motivated to seek a relaxing activity, such as going for a walk or taking a nap. One of the key assumptions of arousal theory is that we're motivated to pursue actions that help us maintain an ideal balance. So again, when we become overly aroused, we seek soothing activities that help to calm and relax us. If we become bored, we head in search of invigorating activities that will energize and arouse us. So it's all about striking the right balance, but that balance is unique to each individual. Now, arousal theory shares some commonalities with drive reduction theory, but instead of focusing on reducing tension, the arousal theory suggests that we're motivated to maintain an ideal level of arousal. So no matter what your needs are, you're going to be motivated to act in order to maintain the levels. One of the assertions of the arousal theory of motivation is that our levels of arousal can influence our behavior. But again, remember, balance is key. Higher levels of arousal can sometimes help us perform better, but can also impair performance if the levels get too high. And this concept is commonly referred to as the Yerkes-Dodson law. So the law states that increased levels of arousal will improve performance, but only up until the optimum arousal level is reached. At that point, performance begins to suffer as arousal levels increase. So additionally, if you're doing a complex task, high or low levels of arousal will affect you more than if you're doing something simple. Most students have experienced this phenomenon when taking exams. So having increased arousal can lead to better test performance by helping you stay alert, focused, and attentive. But excessive arousal can lead to test anxiety and leave you nervous and flustered and unable to concentrate on the test. So when arousal levels are too low or too high, performance tends to be worse. It's all about finding that ideal balance and that happy medium right in the middle where things are optimal. Humanistic theories of motivation are based on the idea that people have strong cognitive reasons to perform various actions. This is famously illustrated in Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. As a humanist, Maslow believed that people have an inborn desire to be self-actualized, that is, to be all that they can be. In order to achieve these goals, however, a number of more basic needs must first be met, such as the need for food, safety, love, and self-esteem. So the hierarchy presents different motivations at different levels. First, people are motivated to fulfill basic biological needs for food and shelter. Okay, we can't really do much else if we are hungry or cold or exposed to the elements. And then we move on to things like safety, love, and self-esteem. So once the lower levels have been met, our primary motivator becomes the need for self-actualization, which is that tippy top of the pyramid. This is the desire to fulfill one's individual potential. And we'll talk more about Maslow when we cover personality in a few weeks. So let's just take a quick look at this video.
One of the most legendary ideas in the history of psychology is located in an unassuming triangle divided into 5 sections, referred to universally simply as Maslow's pyramid of needs. This profoundly influential pyramid first saw the world in an academic journal in the United States in 1943, where it was crudely drawn in black and white and surrounded by dense and jargon-rich text. It has since become a mainstay of psychological analyses, business presentations, and TED Talks, and grown ever more colorful and emphatic in the process. The pyramid was the work of a 35-year-old Jewish psychologist of Russian origins called Abraham Maslow, who'd been looking since the start of his professional career for nothing less than the meaning of life. No longer part of the close-knit Orthodox family of his youth, Maslow wanted to find out what could make life purposeful for people, himself included, in modern-day America, a country where the pursuit of money and fame seemed to have eclipsed any more interior or authentic aspirations. He saw psychology as the discipline that would enable him to answer the yearnings and questions that people had once taken to religion. He suddenly saw that human beings could be said to have essentially 5 different kinds of need. On the one hand, the psychological, or what one could term, without any mysticism being meant by the word, the spiritual, and on the other, the material. For Maslow, we all start with a set of utterly non-negotiable and basic physiological needs for food, water, warmth, and rest. In addition, we have urgent safety needs for bodily security and protection from attack. Then we start to enter the spiritual domain. We need belongingness and love. We need friends and lovers. We need esteem and respect. And lastly, and most grandly, we are driven by what Maslow called, in a now legendary term, an urge for self-actualization, a vast, touchingly nebulous, and yet hugely apt concept, involving what Maslow described as living according to one's full potential, and becoming who we really are. Part of the reason why the description of these needs, laid out in pyramid form, has proved so persuasive is their capacity to capture a profound structural truth about human existence. Maslow was putting his finger with unusual deftness and precision on a set of answers to very large questions that tend to confuse and perplex us viciously, particularly when we're young. Namely, what are we really after? What do we long for? And how do we arrange our priorities and give due regard for the different and competing claims we have on our attention? Maslow was reminding us with artistic concision of the shape of an ideal, well-lived life, proposing at once that we cannot live by our spiritual callings alone, but also that it cannot be right to remain focused only on the material either. We need, in order to be whole, both the material and the spiritual realms to be attended to, the base lending support while the summit offers upward direction and definition. Maslow was rebutting calls from 2 kinds of zealots. Firstly, over-ardent spiritual types who might urge us to forget entirely about money, housing, a good insurance policy, and enough to pay for lunch. But he was also fighting against extreme, hard-nosed pragmatists who might imply that life was simply a brute process of putting food on the table and going to the office. Both camps had, for Maslow, misunderstood the complexity of the human animal. Unlike other creatures, we truly are multifaceted, called at once to unfurl our soul according to its inner destiny, and to make sure we'll be able to pay the bills at the end of the month. Operating at the heyday of American capitalism, Maslow was interestingly ambivalent about business. He was awed by the material resources of large corporations around him, but at the same time, he lamented that almost all their economic activity was, unfairly and bizarrely, focused on honoring customers' needs at the bottom of his pyramid. America's largest companies were helping people to have a roof over their heads, feeding them, moving them around, and ensuring they could talk to each other long distance. But they seemed utterly uninterested in trying to fulfill the essential spiritual appetites defined on the higher slopes of his pyramid. Towards the end of his long life, Maslow expressed a hope that businesses could, in time, learn to make more of their profits from addressing not only our basic needs, but also, and as importantly, our higher spiritual and psychological ones as well. That would be truly enlightened capitalism. In the personal sphere, Maslow's pyramid remains a hugely useful object to turn to whenever we're trying to assess the direction of our lives. Often, as we reflect upon it, we start to notice that we really haven't arranged and balanced our needs as wisely and elegantly as we might. Some lives have got an implausibly wide base. All the energy seems directed towards material accumulation. At the same time, there are lives with an opposite problem, where we've not paid due heed to our need to look after our fragile and vulnerable bodies. Maslow's beautifully simple visual cue is, above anything else, a portrait of a life lived in harmony with the complexities of our nature. We should, at our less frantic moments, use it to reflect with newfound focus on what it is we might do next.
So I have another video here that just shows the hierarchy of needs as portrayed through the movie Up. I'm not going to show that here. You can watch it on your own. It's kind of cute. But that brings us to the end of our conversation about theories of motivations. And so in the next lecture, we're going to talk about what are some examples of powerful motivators and why do they motivate us towards engaging in certain behaviors.